Now, Donald Duke, who governed Cross River State for 8 years, is known for the way he transformed the state from a backwater into a progressive, green, tourism-driven land. And he did it using nothing more than cutting-edge ideas and a strong will, reminiscent, his supporters say, of the likes of Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, challenging conventional conceptions of Nigerian politics. So in that context, you could say that Donald Duke was a revolutionary figure. But that's as far as it went. He's tried severally to move that experience onto the national level, running for president, but failing to get very far. So as Nigeria heads towards 2023, hoping for a refreshing alternative to the traditional presidential candidates and the usual suspects, what reflections does he have about this country, his party, and his life and political career going forward? Well, Mr. Duke came into our studios at the weekend and had this chat with me. And I'm suitably delighted to say that the former governor of Cross River State and former presidential candidate, Donald Duke, joins me now in the studio. Very, very delighted to have you here.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much for coming in. Let's start with the topical issue. The Wike issue within the PDP, something that's divided the party and has serious implications for the presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar going into 2023. It's been described as a titanic battle for supremacy in the PDP. Is it?
It's just doing the right thing. You have a party that has all it takes to be truly national, that is not living up to the bill. You know, we have a unique situation here where ordinarily the rotation, presidential rotation, according to the party's constitution, the presidency should have come to the South. And you also have a unique situation where the chairman of the party is from the North. And you know, it's always vice versa, the chairman from the North, the candidate from the South and all that. But for some strange reason, it is what it is. Both the chairman and the candidate are from the same geopolitical zone, the broader North. Now, the quest here is we style ourselves as the unifier. We style ourselves as a national party. Just coming out of just concluding an administration that is seen overtly as ethnic, it's not the best foot or best face forward. So what the group is asking is broaden the face of the party, make it look like a national party. No one is contesting the presidency of Atiku Abubakar. But here you have a party where the DG of the campaign is Tambuwal from the North, the national chairman is from the North, the candidate is from the North. Then we style ourselves a unifier. What about the South that feels deprived that this ought to be their hour? So we're trying to manage it for the victory of the party. This is not a time to who is right or who is wrong or make a point, you know. This is a time to do the right thing, and we are a party in opposition. We cannot afford braggadocio. We just cannot. And so what Wike is asking, or what the group is, that when they say Wike is a governor, so of course he would in the forefront. But what the group is largely asking for is give us a broad-faced party that enables all of us, North, South, campaign effectively.
So where do you yourself, where do you stand on that issue? Are you supporting one side or the other? Because you've been seen in pictures with Wike and all the rest.
Absolutely in support of a broader-faced party. Right. In other words, the national chairman and indeed the national working committee, right, should be substituted to allow a national chairman emerge from the South. We're going into an election. To say you will do it after the elections, who cares who is national chairman after the elections, right? This is the time to do it. So that's where I stand.
But what about the fact that the chairman of the board of trustees has now comes from the south. What difference does that make? Because now you're going to have him as well as the chairman of the party.
The chairman of the board of trustees in the management of the party is inconsequential. It's not an executive body. It's really more like the conscience of the party. So if you go at a rally on a podium, you would have the candidate, you would have the national chairman who is going to hand over the flag to the candidate, and of course you'll have the DG of the campaign. You will not have the chairman of the board of trustees there. You know, what we are doing is really trying to put up a brave front, because there are people who are aggrieved. Look, 8 years of a leadership that is tacitly ethnic, and no one would take that. The Buhari administration, they make no bones about it. If the position were reversed, 8 years of southern leadership that is tacitly ethnic, I doubt if our brothers in the north would accept another 2 years, let alone 4, of another southern leadership. But like I said, it is what it is. So let's make the best of a situation, and that's where we stand today.
But the Wike group, of which you're a part, wants Iyochie Ayu gone. The other side say they can't do it except constitutionally, and the leadership of the party, which could have done it, have passed a vote of confidence in him. I mean, what happens next? It looks like an impossible impasse.
It's not. You see, you could create an ambience that makes it look impossible. I'm tied onto the Constitution and all that. If you had followed the Constitution in the first place, we would not be where we are today. If you'd followed the Constitution in the first place, then automatically the presidential candidate would have come from the South. Be that as it may, nothing stops the National Executive Council for dissolving the National Working Committee. It's the exigency. You've got to ask yourself, what is important for you? Do you really want to win this election? Where is the base of the PDP? As far as I'm concerned, the base of the PDP is the South-South and the Southeast. And we're being threatened, and our bases. Going further, maybe we'll get to talk about it, I think we literally lost maybe 70% of the votes in the Southeast, and at least 50% of the South-South. So this is not the time to prove a point. Constitutions, the exigencies that you can mold and get away with. You could have a new working committee working in an acting capacity. No one is disputing the leadership and disputing the candidature of Atiku Abubakar. But give us the wherewithal, give us the tools to enable us go into an election and fight it out. I can't go. I will feel miffed if I had to, in Calabar or in Cross River, be talking about a party, trying to distinguish it from another party that has been overtly ethnic, and all the people you see on the rostrum are from one section of the country. What gives us the moral right to criticize a Muslim ticket if we're having such a front being put forward? And Charles, it's the least that could have been asked for. It's a no-brainer. It's not something that we should agitate over. Dr. Iyochie Ayu himself should have spared the party this agony. What I see going on in the PDP is pride going before a fall, right? This is not the time to prove who is right, who is wrong. 5 governors have taken a position, actually 6. There's a silent 6th, have taken a position, and you're still trying to prove a point? In 2015, 6 governors walked out of PDP, and look at where we are today. So I think it's the pound here is a victory. The penny here is Ayu. It's penny wise, pound foolish.
That's a very interesting analogy there. But you mentioned the fact that you wouldn't have the moral authority to criticize a Muslim ticket. But isn't the fact that this is taking place in the public domain rather than privately within the PDP, isn't the damage already done?
Well, it's happening already. It's like a couple fighting. It always starts privately in the home, then it spills out to the divorce courts and all that. There's been more than ample time to deal with this matter. It's been dragged on and on. The candidate himself has admitted on 2 occasions that Ayo would go. When he comes back, the people around him convince him otherwise. And so then they now want to play brinkmanship. Oh, it's too late, too near the elections. This is the longest run we've had for campaigns. Immediately after the primaries, this should have been taken care of.
Right. So where do things stand at the moment? Does it look like it can be resolved before it damages the PDP's chances irredeemably before the election?
For me, the ball is on the court of the presidential candidate and the National Working Committee with the chairman. Yes, it can be done. It can be done in a day.
But they're getting on with the campaign regardless.
How could they? How do you go to River State, which is the largest voting population in the South-Southern campaign, knowing fully well that no one from the party, neither the party's candidate, gubernatorial candidate, will be there to receive you? You just have an empty podium. How do you come to Cross River State? Yesterday, the entire party in Cross River State, candidates and all, State Working Committee, pledged support for this stance. So if Atiku Abubakar, for instance, should go to Cross River State to campaign, who is going to be on the podium with him? You know, so you're going to have a very hollow campaign, and they know it's not realistic. Deal with this matter. What does it take? One person? God forbid it, but what if someone you drop down dead, we don't go on? It's arrant nonsense.
Let me move away from that, because your experience, you've got such a broad church of experience that I think the country benefits from your analysis and your insight, hindsight, foresight into developments in this country beyond that very specific issue within the PDP. Let me ask you to reflect on your life and your political career so far. I mean, you've been a 2-term governor and a presidential candidate. Not a bad innings, if you ask me.
Well, I'd have liked to do better.
And what would that better entail?
Well, you see obvious problems in your country with very simple solutions. And you really wonder, why are they being done? Why are we where we are today? We have the resources, material, human, but the political will to do what is right just seems lacking. I'll give you an example. Take Boko Haram. It started like a joke. One guy gets killed. If we had dealt with the matter there and then, right, extrajudicial killing, that would have done with that problem. But politics crept in. Oh, the governor is this way, the governor is that way, and it blossomed into something that we have no control over. There are many like that. I'll give you an example of the Chibok girls, and this is the first time I'll be saying this publicly. When the girls were taken, there was offer for assistance from Israel to come in here, identify, because Boko Haram were asking for prisoner swap. We rebuffed it. That problem would have been solved within a month, but we didn't do it.
Yeah, but that was a
PDP. Jonathan.
That was a PDP
Jonathan.
government.
Yeah,
your party.
I'm not being partisan here. I'm just saying, you know, when you talk of PDP, APC, most of APC is PDP, but it's okay. What I'm saying is that the leadership, we failed to do what is right when it ought to be done. And that's what has led us to where we are. Look at what we talk today, the constant refrain is oil theft. That has been going on for years. If you say they built a 4-kilometer pipeline to to steal the oil. It didn't happen overnight. These things have been, but you see, Charles, the problem with Nigeria is a failure of consequences. If you give people responsibility and they fail to act or act inadequately, deal with it and deal with them and move on. But when you're now clouded with personal feelings or interactions, we're going to go down the way we are. If you are in charge of an area and a crime is committed in that area, you must be the person held responsible. If you have a security man in your house and a burglar comes in, that's the first person you go to. The same thing operates in a nation. So failure, our leadership, and really it's a problem of leadership, because in the state where everything has been given to you and you can't make it work, then it's a leadership, and it's not drawn on one person. I say leadership, and this is, you have a leader who has a responsibility to headhunt the best hands. Like a football team, you're the captain, you've got to identify the best hands and what roles you want them to play. And that's the problem with Nigeria.
Well, let's turn to the upcoming elections. What has struck you as you've observed Nigerian politics heading towards 2023? Something this time you're doing from the sidelines, as not as a participating candidate.
Well, this particular election is going to be a game changer, no question about it. It's not either or, either APC or PDP. There are two other parties that are making very, very strong inroads. There is the Labour Party. The candidature of Peter Obi is almost a maverick situation. No one even understands where it's coming from. I can bet you that Peter himself is confounded by what's going on. But you ask yourself, who is Peter taking the votes from? Again, I think it's more of PDP. Then there's Kwankwaso. We're not reporting enough about Kwankwaso because maybe where he operates, social media and the conventional media are not as eloquent there as in the South. But he's pulling a crowd, and where's that coming from? Mainly in the Northwest. So what we have here is you've got to hold on to what you have. And this is my quarrel with the PDP. Try and hold on to what you have. Peter Obi and Kwankwaso left PDP under the leadership of Iyorchia Ayu. And he failed to stop them. We are behaving, I think we were too long in power, 16 years, that we got used to having things our way. We still haven't recalibrated ourselves that we are the party in opposition. You know, I'm going to take you back to Wike. People mix up the substance from the style. His style is his style, it's personal to him. Maybe it draws attention for him, dancing and singing and saying, as it pains them, it's so sweet, stuff like that. But listen to the message. He's not contesting the presidency or anything. He's saying, look, I want to campaign for you guys, but I can't do it with this front. It reminds me a lot, and I once had an issue with my dad, my relationship with Fela, and he couldn't understand why we were close enough to the point that Fela visited my home. And what are you doing with this guy? My question, what's wrong with the guy? Oh, I don't like, he smokes pot, he does this, he does that. Do I smoke pot? Do I do this? But his message resonates. It's still resonating to today. And if I want to go biblical, John the Baptist was not conventional. He was purely unorthodox in his means.
Yeah, but it cost him his head, though, didn't it?
Yes, but Christ said of him, of all those born of women, none is greater than John. That says something. So we mustn't mix up the message and the messenger. The messenger is an individual. He has his own idiosyncrasies and all that. But the message is important.
But given what you're saying, and very interesting that assessment, how much does politics in Nigeria need to express hope Because that, in some ways, is what you're suggesting. What is going on in the PDP, the people in the South need to feel hopeful, involved within the party. All the elements of politics, in some ways, need to express that to bring the people in.
This contraption called Nigeria is not a natural contraption. It's still evolving, right? 60 years in the between, we've had several coups, we've had civil war. People are still wary of each other, unfortunately. So perception must be out there stating obviously that, look, we are one people, or we're striving to be one people. The present administration has not helped that at all. So people are very fickle. If a minister is replaced, if you look at the replacements of ministers in ministries, whether we like it or not, there are certain frontline ministries. But each time a frontline minister is replaced, you find that it goes to a certain section of the country. And there are many examples about that. People ask questions, okay? If you look at the security apparatus, that has been flogged over and over again. It's dominated by one section. If you look at the leadership of NNPC, it's dominated. We still, unfortunately, have not been able to go beyond our ethnic cleavages. There's adequate manpower wherever in the country, north, south, east, west. You have the challenge as a leader to source out the best from each zones. You can't say that this is the only zone that can produce it. We need to move further than that. It's everywhere. It's a sad thing, but we have to work on that.
But in that context, then, one would have thought that you wouldn't be in the PDP, that you'd probably be in the Labour Party in order to rebalance this thing that you're talking about, which clearly is something that you appear to believe in. The sense of justice and the sense of redistribution and bringing everybody on board. I would have thought that the Labour Party would be your party rather than the PDP.
What is happening with the Labour Party today is a fluke. I think we're seeing is a mass resentment of the status quo. I went on sabbatical to SDP, you know that?
Yes.
Because I was frustrated within the status quo.
And you were their presidential candidate.
I was their presidential candidate. But reality is that these parties do not have the wherewithal to win a national election because, look, there are over 7,000 polling booths, the manpower required. And this is why Peter and to some extent Kwankwaso, they're mavericks. No one is talking about any other candidate in senatorial or gubernatorial or House of Reps in either of these parties. It's just the presidential candidate. In other words, people have come to assume now that the head is rotten. Just get rid of the head and we would make it. I know better than that. I know that winning an election is one thing, governance is another. And therefore the challenge, if either of them should win, is how to put in place a government. And the only way they can survive is have a national government in place, which would take the best from both the PDP and the APC. That has to be done. Otherwise they would win an election but would not be able to govern.
Well, I mean, just listening to you, fascinating analysis, by the way. But you've talked about a lot of things that are wrong with this country, and a lot of people would agree with you. I mean, it's getting to that point, which is really worrying people, like a tipping point. I'm sure you've heard of the doomsday clock, which assesses the extent of danger for nuclear war or nuclear proliferation. Since the 1980s, it's been set at 4 minutes to midnight. In January this year, they set it to 100 seconds to midnight with an eye to what was unfolding in Ukraine and the potential threat. If Nigeria had a doomsday clock, where would you set it right now?
6 months. You know,
You mean 6 minutes or?
6 months. I wouldn't give it 6 minutes.
Right, okay.
The reason is that we as a people, we've been dragged on for long. If the elections in February next year is not seen to be transparently free and fair, then you'll have that doomsday coming. And that's why I'm giving it 6 months, because we all know that that is the tipping point. At that point, you're going to have an implosion. You know, what's going on in the polity today, you find that there's a lot more activity in the non-traditional parties, the Labour and, PDP is stuck with its internal problems. APC has its own internal challenges, going back and forth. The candidate or the campaigns going on in Labour are not funded by the party. It's self-funding. It's just, the party is just purely a platform to change the status quo. People are still trying to find out where is their logo and all that. What is Labour's logo? And so they have a lot of work to teach people on that. Initially, I used to think that, maybe they'll get the numbers, but they may not get the spread. I'm beginning to think otherwise. These guys may end up getting the spread at the expense, if it's Labour, at the expense of PDP, and if it's NMPP, probably at the expense of APC. But yes, for us, the clock, it's ticking, but by February, we would know we would probably be tipping if you have the kind of elections we had in 19, where 4 hours to voting, the elections were postponed, this country will implode. And I hope Yakubu is listening to this, because I hold him responsible for that, what happened in 19. He said prior to that date that INEC was ready for the elections, all the materials had been deployed. Then 4 hours to voting, he postponed it. And he didn't do the honorable thing of resigning. I see him as being partisan. I think he was playing an APC script, and I wrote to him personally saying that. And I hope he doesn't try it this time, because no amount of security apparatus will be able to hold the conflagration that we will go into.
And on that ominously prophetic note, I want to thank you very much indeed, Donald Duke, former governor of Cross River State and former presidential candidate. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you.
Well, that's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.